Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented by Remington Tavern. Remington Tavern is located at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m., $5 Woodford Wednesdays. You can find them on Instagram at RemyTav Cincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. And with that, I'm Aaron Smith, joined by George Vogel. And what a day it's been as Cincinnati Bearcats overcome a 16-point deficit and hang on to get the win in the first round of the Big 12 tournament, their first of many Big 12 tournaments to come. But they beat West Virginia in the first two-game win streak in their Big 12 era. 90-85 is your final, though. George, take us through your thoughts on that game.
That was crazy. That was nuts. With about 12 minutes left in the game, I had to read through some of these text messages I sent to people while that game was on. Actually, I'd be too embarrassed. I would owe too many apologies. I actually texted at the end of the game that I already owe Wes an apology for what I texted a half hour ago. But that game was shaping up to be the biggest disappointment since that Nevada fiasco down in Nashville in the NCAA tournament. I mean, you knocked the crap out of this team on Saturday, and you know they're going to come back at you. You know that. And West Virginia, to their credit, did. But you got to think UC's a better team based on what we saw, and shouldn't have found themselves in a 16-point hole in the second half of this game with under 12 minutes to play. But thanks to West Virginia for the technical fouls. And what can you say about Lukosius and Day Thomas and the way they scored the basketball today? The UC defense was terrible. I'm not sure it ever did get very good in this game. Until the very final, maybe minute 30, they got a couple stops there where you're like, God, if they get a stop, they can take control of this game and win this game, and they were able to do that. But that just shows you how sports are, and just you think you know something, and you think you have an inkling. This is the kind of game it's going to be, or this is what's going to happen, and it's nothing like that. I mean, UC owned the paint on Saturday, owned the paint, and I don't know what the total was final after this game, but they were outscored by quite a bit in the paint in this basketball game. So how do you explain that? I don't know, other than it's just sports and you just play the games as they unfold, and UC was able to do that today. But man, oh man, that was setting up to be a big disappointment. But they found a way to get it done, and kind of in an unlikely way with Day Thomas heating up the way he did in the last – I think he had three of his threes in the final 3.5 minutes to help put this thing away.
Yeah, it took a career day by both Simas and Day. The most points either of them have scored in their Bearcats, at least as Bearcats. I know for Simas, it was his career high. Not sure if that was Day's career high with his JUCO ball.
Right, but certainly his career high in Division I. With 29 and Simas with 31.
60 points between the two of them. I would not have ever guessed, ever, that you'd have 14 of 22 from beyond the arc by those two guys in a game.
That's incredible. That's
outstanding. I would not have believed that with about 10 minutes left in this game that you'd have anyone finishing on the positive side of a plus-minus.
No.
This two guys fouled out. I was praying there would not be overtime, as both John Newman and Aziz Bandego both foul out in this one. I did set on Monday night on the BBP. Or maybe it was Sunday night when Chad and I were doing the nightcap. I set an over-under at 2.5. If I was to give you 2.5, would you take the over-under on technical fouls in the rematch? And nailed it as I took the over. But I don't understand what Raekwon Battle was thinking walking into Cincinnati's huddle. Like, I don't. We've seen that before. As Bengals fans, we've seen that happen and nothing get called. But I wouldn't imagine in a tournament like this where there was quite a bit of physicality going on, especially down low between Edwards and Azeez, that you were going to get away with a whole lot.
Yeah, and the refs tried to get a handle on that too as things started to heat up. But I will say you can boil this game down to that in this sense, in that West Virginia completely lost composure and did things they never should have done, and some of it for no good reason. While UC kept composure the entire time. I mean, I was noticing this in the second half, and it's like when they were coming back and they came back in a hurry to tie that game. I think it only took like 4.5 minutes after they were down 16 to come back and get the thing tied at like 68 or whatever it was. But Simas Lukosius and even Day, you look at their faces after they make these shots, and it looked the same as it did the entire game. It wasn't looking like they were thinking, hey, now we're rolling, we're doing. They just even keel the whole way. Finally, one of those late bomb threes Simas hit, he let out a big smile as he went back down the court. Like, holy smokes, even he couldn't believe he was dropping them like that. But for the most part, they kept an even keel, and West Virginia, man, just, the gaskets were blowing and the springs were blowing out of the frame, and they fell apart. And you give Wes Miller and the coaching staff a lot of credit for that, for them keeping this thing together, even when they're down 16. I mean, things can go haywire. I never thought it would go haywire the other way, and it really did. And that poor interim coach for West Virginia, if he cost himself already, he probably did today.
Yeah, it was just a strange game. Even looking at the stats, the final stat lines here. I mean, when you have 60 points by Lukosius and Day, and then the next leading scorer was Dan with 13, and beyond that, you didn't have more than 6 from any of the other remaining 6 players. 5 players.
But good for the Bearcats for riding those hot hands and running some stuff for those guys. And there was a good play late in the game when Lukosius popped out from underneath the hoop to get an open look at a 3. I mean, that's what you do. And, you ride it till you can't anymore. And they rode it all the way to the win. And so, again, as much as I was boo-hooing and crybabying around about the coaching staff in the first, 40 minutes of that game, give them all the credit for the way they kept everything together. And I'll say this, that team was prepared for anything, and they got it. They got a pretty good punch and were able to come back and stay alive in this tournament. And now, they set themselves up for that game tomorrow night, which is a winnable game for Cincinnati.
Yeah, they're going to be facing off against a decimated Kansas team playing without their 2 leading scorers in McCullough and Hunter Dickinson. But you had mentioned points in the paint. Cincinnati had 20 in this one. West Virginia had 36.
Yeah, and I mean, that's quite the opposite of what it was Saturday. Same 2 teams. It's just amazing how a game can be so different in just a matter of a few days. But we see it happen.
Yeah, the rebounds were very close in this one. West Virginia with I think it's 32 total. Cincinnati with 36. A lot of assists on this one for both teams, as Cincinnati had 17 and West Virginia had 18. Not a ton of turnovers. Neither team had more than 9, as Cincinnati had 9 and West Virginia had Cincinnati had 8. West Virginia had 9. Just a very strange game the way it played out. I happened to catch them on coming back and did manage to make some money on them. So I was super happy about that. But I don't
As
know.
long as you
It
didn't
was
bet them before the game because they were favored by like 9.5, right?
I didn't touch it until like halfway through the second half.
Smart man. Smart man. But yeah, it was fun to watch. I'll say that. I mean, I'm telling you what, um, this Big 12 season has been a blast. And what was it? 8 losses by 5 points or less, right? Including the
Yes.
one to Kansas out there in Big 12 play. That's crazy.
Yeah. The Bearcats were playing without Victor Locken in this one, as he's still out with the ankle, and playing without CJ Frederick once again, as he's still out with that nagging hamstring. So you only ran a rotation of 8 in this one. So I don't know if they're gonna make it to if they're gonna play through these next couple days. That's a lot of minutes piling up on 8 guys, depending on the severity of Victor Locken's ankle still. I don't know that you're going to see another night quite like this afternoon with the shooting where it ended up, because I don't recall a game this season that they hit the way that they hit today, especially from beyond the arc. 16 of 38 is madness. First off, that they shot that many times because they buried themselves in a hole from shooting so many threes in the first half.
Yeah, and that's what I didn't get was all the threes in the first half with what worked Saturday, and it just seemed like they just kept jacking them up, and West Virginia's doing what they can to counter what they saw Saturday. So I kind of get a little bit of it, but my God, it just seemed like it was, a lot of times just kind of settling for it, and it wasn't working. And I'm not sure why they kept going back to the well in the first half, but by golly, it paid big dividends in the second half. No doubt about that. I mean, CMOS had 6 of his 7 in the second half.
Yeah. And obviously very, very important in that whole comeback. But
What else was big was him stepping up and making those free throws when they did get technicals. And, that one time they had a 5-point possession because he made the free throws, and then there was a 3 that was hit. He was 8 of 8 from the line.
8 of 8.
6 of those were technical fouls. And then he drew 1 foul and went to the line and made 2. So if I'm remembering this correctly, I mean, that's insane. And UC shot free throws fairly well today.
16 of 21, 76% on the day. Day also finished perfect from the line. Jizzle did as well. Both of them going 2 of 2. Dan 2 of 4 and Aziz 2 of 5. But Aziz also finishing with 13 rebounds on the day. It's just you couldn't have asked for a better comeback. You certainly could have asked for more from this team, both offensively and defensively, because defensively they did not look anywhere near the team that they were on Saturday when they played West Virginia. There were times when West Virginia was able to not just catch and shoot, but catch, set, and then shoot without anybody in their face the entire time. It absolutely bananas in that regard.
And quite honestly, even down the stretch after they came back and tied it up with 7-something to go or whatever, they tied it up quickly. It was still a dogfight. They were still struggling to keep West Virginia from scoring. And West Virginia shot the ball well, too. That's probably as well as they've shot it all year, I would imagine. But they were getting too many. I mean, sometimes they were just – it looked like they were just walking in and laying it in and getting too deep against this defense. And I don't know what that was all about, but I'm sure they're going to look at that and get that fixed as best they can, because that's not what UC does. There's been some games where it felt like a layup line for the other team, and it was feeling that way today. And you're not going to win many games giving up the looks they gave up in this game. They were very fortunate to get out of there with a win.
Jesse Edwards at one point, I can't recall at what point in the game it was. I want to say it was midway through the first half, where he was untouched going to 2 hands to the hoop. And I believe it was Jamil had missed. It was almost like a backdoor dunk. But I think Jameel had missed his assignment or pickup on that, and Dan's just kind of watching Jesse Edwards go by him. That whole sequence, I freaked out on my TV when I was watching that one.
Yeah, and I remember there was another one in the second half, and you know the corner was wide open there for a while too for West Virginia.
Yeah,
I think like late in the first half they had several open looks from there. I don't know what was going on there. And then in the second half there was a time where Dan got caught inside and rushed out to cover the guy in the corner who just blew right by him for a layup. And it's like, my God, you can't win that way. But somehow they found a way to do it. But that's got to get fixed. That's got to get fixed. I don't care, you know. And I know Kansas without those two players, and those are two first-team all-conference players, they're without tomorrow night. But if UC plays defense like that, the Kansas walk-ons are going to be scoring.
well, and I'm glad you brought that up. I'm curious how much Bill Self even runs his regular starters out, like a Johnny Furphy or a
Right.
KJ Adams, simply because you don't have your two starters. If the game starts to get away from you, if you're Bill Self, do you even leave those guys in? Because at that point, what are you really fighting for if you're Kansas?
Correct. And that's going to be real interesting to see how that unfolds. He doesn't obviously doesn't like to lose and isn't in the business of giving away games, but he also knows, you know, without those two, and he said they're not going to play till the NCAA tournament. What are his odds of walking out of Kansas City with a Big 12 championship? I mean, he's probably already got a top 4 or 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. And you know how the committee looks at this stuff when somebody's got injuries like this. You know, sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I think it wouldn't matter. I think they would hang on to whatever seed they have at this point. That's pretty much how the committee's going to look at them come Sunday.
The way that he's phrased it, too, I don't know that Hunter Dickinson is in danger of missing the actual NCAA tournament. I don't know that McCullough is either. I want to say that he's just being, again, what are you playing for if you're Kansas in this one? Just a piece of hardware to say that you won the tournament? Bill Self probably has plenty of Big 12 tournament trophies in his office at this point, where when you aren't very deep with this particular Kansas team, I'd be nervous about, even like I said, just running out your regular starters out there when they normally run anywhere between 30 and 40 minutes already. I'd be worried about gassing those guys or potentially running the risk of injury to any of those guys. And then what do you have going into the NCAA tournament?
Right, because if there's one thing Kansas doesn't have, it's a bench that contributes a lot to them, and we saw that in the game against UC. And yeah, if you're already down like that, and then, you know, it's interesting because you know, all these coaches catch heat, and Self's catching it now because of McCullough, and like he should have probably been sat down sooner because he's been battling this knee thing, and what was he doing? And it doesn't matter. If you're a Hall of Fame coach, a first-year coach, you're going to hear it from fans no matter what. And he's hearing it a little bit from the Kansas faithful that he's got to sit him now in the tournament. But with Dickinson out, it probably makes sense. I mean, you want both those horses ready to go for the NCAA tournament, and he's got 2 weeks to prepare for that now, or over a week, I guess I should say, but a week and a half. And it'll be 2 weeks since they played. So, you know, what you are saying about taking it easy on the rest of those guys has merit. And we'll see. You know, Furphy lit the Bearcats up pretty good in that game out there in January when they played. Dickinson didn't do a whole lot, but McCullough sure did. He had 20 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 steals. That's a pretty good line. And that's a damn good player, obviously, first team all conference. But all of this, did you think UC would be favored in this game against Kansas? You would never believe it unless you knew about these injuries.
I think it got to a point where most of us were probably concerned if Cincinnati was going to be favored in any Big 12 tournament game.
Right.
And I think you're going to see 2 in a row now. And as Cincinnati goes for their first real winning streak in this Big 12 slate, as 3 in a row, it constitutes a streak, George. We heard that in Major League, right?
And I've seen them favored by 1, 1.5, all those early lines that have come out. But It's going to be interesting what the bettors think of this. There's got to be some people that are going to be seeing that line. Obviously, people who throw money on this will investigate and wise up. But it's funny if you're not a Kansas fan or a Cincinnati fan or a Big 12, you're just some guy sitting up in Seattle, Washington, and wants to throw money on a game, and you see that, it's like, holy crap, what's going on there? It's, like this Temple fiasco all over again. Although I don't know where that stands now. Did you see any of that where they were looking at the Temple game from this past weekend that got really weird with the line, and then they got blown out by UAB? Did you see anything about that? And
I read up on it.
Yeah,
I did.
I don't know what the latest is on that, but that was pretty interesting.
It was a couple days ago when I read the article that I saw on that. I haven't seen anything since on that either.
Yeah, I don't either.
I can't imagine if they find anything that they're going to be super loud about it either. I would imagine you want that story to go away as quickly as possible. If you're anybody at either school or at like with any ties to the betting industry,
it was weird, and obviously, if somebody's got some knowledge on that, they're going to dump money and it's going to change the line. But that line shot up on game day like crazy.
I think it was the third time Temple had a line that jumped.
Yeah,
over the past month.
Yeah, that's.
I think it was 3, Jason. I think it was 2, and then the one that happened last week. So
the UAB game, which they didn't even show up.
There was a Memphis game, first half line.
Yes,
that got flagged too. So usually if there's 3 games worth of smoke, there's a fire somewhere.
Yeah, there is.
I don't know how big that fire is, but something's smoldering somewhere.
Yeah, that was easy money for somebody, I guess. Just not me.
No, I didn't see any Bob Huggins sightings at this particular matchup of Cincinnati and West Virginia. Now, that said, George, I don't know if you heard about all of the flack that Bob Huggins caught from the Mountaineer Nation for attending the Bearcats game wearing red and black.
Right.
But as somebody who's had more than his fair share of conversations with Coach Huggins, I was just curious to get your thoughts about Bob showing up to the game in his red and black self-logoed button down.
I'm not shocked. I was a little surprised because, they're playing West Virginia, and I don't know if that's, his subtle jab at how he felt he was treated there. He
went to the West Virginia game when they were in West Virginia, and he was wearing West Virginia Mountaineer blue.
Right, and I guess he felt he was a guest of Cincinnati, and he was going to come here, and it was a wear red day, and, it was actually a great thing to see. And obviously he got a great reception. They put him up on the board and the crowd always goes nuts. And one thing about Bob, he does love the people and all that, but he also has, he doesn't give a damn sometimes of what people are going to think. Bob's going to do what Bob does. And I'm sure he had every reason for it. Felt like maybe he was supporting a lot of his former players, and some of those came back, and Kenyon Martin was there. I can see why West Virginia fans probably didn't like it, but you know what? Maybe that's Bob's way of just kind of bridging the whole thing and saying, let's forget about the past. And, not that Bob's always saying this, but it's kind of like a can't we all just get along moment for him. And that's kind of unusual for him.
That's the first game I can remember that he's shown up as a guest, as a fan in the stands, not as a coach. He
was there. I want to say it was the UCLA game a few years ago that, and that may have been the 92 kind of reunion 25-year thing.
But he was still representing West Virginia when he went out there wearing the pullover.
Yeah. He was still, obviously, he was still head coach then. But yeah, he did show up to that game. I think it was the UCLA game at Fifth Third Arena. God, I'm having trouble remembering now, and I should. It wasn't that long ago. I believe I saw him at a downtown establishment after that game.
That sounds about right. He was there for the recycling, though, right?
Yeah, there was a lot of recycling going on at closing time. I'll just say that. But it's
In
good
any
to see him
case,
back, and it's good to see him get some cheers at Fifth Third. And you know, I don't think anyone will ever completely move past that whole thing, nor should they. It was a great era for UC and great basketball, great players. I mean, boy, it just, you know, I'll never get past that season when Kenyon broke the leg. I mean, that was a favorite to win it all, man. Tough. Kind of what Dayton went through with the COVID year.
yeah, that one.
Not that they were a favorite to win it, but they certainly were looking like a Final Four team.
It looks like Yormark is done talking, I believe, at this point in time, but he was speaking at the tournament tonight, and some of the quotes that I'm seeing right now as they discuss the NCAA tournament, potentially moving to 76 teams is the number that he's put out there tonight, saying that the data shows if you expand the NCAA tournament to 76 teams, the Power Four conferences benefit from that, and the Big 12 is at the center. That, of course, comes from Keegan Nickerson of Bearcat Journal, who is there in attendance. Any thoughts to expanding this tournament to when where Cincinnati in this same position might not actually be on the bubble?
Yeah. Boy, every time they expand it, people think, oh, it's diluting it. It's all that, you know, and now it's at 68, and it didn't really seem to do a whole lot of damage to it. So, you know, I don't think everybody should get in, but the more the merrier. I mean, I think, you know, 68, 76, is that big of a deal? And I wonder how they would handle that. I mean, I guess, do you have more games in the middle of the week to reach the it's, you know, that, and I don't know how good all that is for those teams that have to play those games and turn around and fly to another venue. It seems to me they could start placing those games at the venue where they're going to be playing later that week, as opposed to everybody having to be in Dayton. And I'm guessing that may be what they're talking about doing.
Well, then we have to share that money with other people. Now you're diluting it, George. You're taking money away from Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah, and I don't want to do that, but you know, they can get a first and second round every now and then. It doesn't have to be the first four there every stinking year.
I can't see that ever happening, George, because you don't know who those teams are until the very end. And then you'd have to have an arena all of a sudden be ready. One or two of the 8 first-round sites would then have to play it. You're not going to get all 8 of those sites from Tuesday through Sunday. Like they're going to have concerts and like other things scheduled to where booking them out for all of that would seem untenable.
Well, I think you could schedule it such that it's like, okay, this year these play-in games will be here, here, and here, and if they can't have it there, then it goes there, there, and there. I think
it doesn't match the scheduling principles that the committee's supposed to use. So then you would be forcing
2 big long days in Dayton.
I think actually what you'd either see like the 4 games like we've seen before, or you'd see them find another site where they could run just like they run Dayton, 2 games on Tuesday night, 2 games on Wednesday night. Maybe you have a eastern half of the country spot and a western part of the country spot or something. But that would be what would make sense.
Something out if they do that, because you don't want a situation like Indiana had a couple years ago where, remember, they had that flight and then it got delayed and they didn't get out of Dayton because the plane was somewhere else, and then they barely get into the city before they have a shoot around and a news conference, and that just, you know, if I remember,
didn't they make a run though?
What's that?
Didn't they make a run?
Yeah, I think they did win that game, but I just think that's a crappy position to put these guys in if you're running what's supposed to be a first-rate tournament.
You think the NCAA cares about the kids?
It's not
No,
about the
You,
players.
you silly
I do.
goose.
It's about the money. It's
You
not about the
silly
players.
goose.
I care about
Um,
the kids. I
Some of
I
the
thought that was just a travesty, and they got to do better.
some of the other quotes to come out of Kansas City from your mark have to do with the basketball tournament staying in Kansas City through 2031. You also have all 16 teams will be competing in next year's tournament, as opposed to some of the other conferences that are contemplating ruling teams out and only having the top so many teams get in. He also mentioned in regards to potential expansion, could we go beyond 16 teams? Who knows? And then just added that he is focused on integrating the 4 new teams into the conference next year before getting out over his skis.
Well, that's probably a smart move right there, because they just added 4, lost 2, and then adding the 4 more. But boy, what a conference! I mean, we think it's it's something else. It's fun to be a part of, and if they can grow it in the future, fine. But man, oh man, the basketball is nuts now, and it's going to be nuttier next year.
Yeah, losing Texas and Oklahoma, I think they'll be more than well represented as you bring in, Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado. Utah and Arizona, I believe, are the 2 of those 4 that have performed the best this season. But who knows what next season holds for really anybody, and you can change your entire outlook in the course of an off season. So
Totally, it's almost portal time, isn't it?
it is almost portal time. It starts next week. We are right around the corner. But that is an excellent transition into what has gone on this week, as essentially portal season began for the NFL, as free agency is upon us, and the Cincinnati Bengals have been a little active.
Yeah, and as much as like there's a lot of stuff to dislike about the portal and what it does to college sports, but it does do this. You're talking about it almost year round now. Like in the what used to be the complete dead periods, there's portal time and players moving. Well, the NFL figured that out a long time ago. And their only dead period is basically, from early June to when training camp starts, everything. And even then, there's some NFL news. But man, oh man, the NFL offseason just never stops. And this free agency and the way things have started. And, once again, the Bengals make a little bit of a splash on day one, something they used to never do. And did a nice job getting the safety, Geno Stone from Baltimore, backing that up with picking up Zach Moss and making the move at running back, and picking up the tight end Gesicki today, who really, talent, upside,
cost effective.
You hope very cost effective. In fact, all 3 of these guys they picked up are somewhat cost effective, but give them plenty of room to do some crazy things here before this period closes. So, and they kept some of their own, Drew Sample back, Cody Ford just for depth on the offensive line, which is great. I was all about that. Akeem Davis Gaither, who's a big special teams demon, and Travion Williams back at running back. So they made those moves just to help secure some depth. I like what they're doing, and with the money they should have on hand, they shouldn't be anywhere near done. And they've got several ways to go, and they still have a lot of guys, that they're their own free agents they would probably like to keep. Like, leading the list would have to be DJ Reader, I would think.
I would agree. Now, Twitter was set ablaze today, as I informed you just before we started this, and it was kind of spearheaded by one of the former Cincinnati Bengals, Tyler Eifert, as there is yesterday, T. Higgins requests a trade formally. It became public, and that really comes as no surprise, as his agent is the same agent that represented Jesse Bates, who kind of went through this exact same song and dance at this point. We're almost playing the hits in
Right.
regards to
Watch,
a
rinse, repeat.
right. But the Twitter sphere, especially in Bengals Twitter in particular, is on fire right now and being stoked by plenty of big people. I saw as I was just scrolling a few minutes ago, even Kay Adams was kind of giving it a little blow on the fire sparks, I guess. But Justin Jefferson, his name is now being discussed as a potential T. Higgins trade partner. And as you talk about the Super Bowl in New Orleans, Joe and Jamar and Justin Jefferson being previous teammates. Oh, I don't think there's anything real to this, Chad, but we do a podcast here, so we have to talk about things like this.
You're legitimizing it, that it's as if it's actually something that it started as a Twitter, like somebody, my best friend's buddy, like does this, and somebody told him. Like,
Come
it's
on,
Tyler
Chad.
Eifert.
Picture of him at CVG, and you know it.
Tyler Eifert continues to say things like, "Oh, these aren't jokes."
That's what kind of that I can't explain. Eifert's a level-headed, good dude, and I don't think he would just throw that out there as a joke. I don't know, maybe, but maybe he's tweaking someone. But that's the one that makes me wonder. But the rest of it, I'll believe it when I see it. Would it be great? Oh my God, are you kidding me? If they could make that work, and
Yeah.
Randy's asking comment on Duke Tobin, who I think's done a terrific job here over the past 10 years with this team, and especially what they've done lately, and the way he's been able to, I won't say it's just him, but they've kind of dragged the Bengals into this 21st century and being a player in free agency, and they've made a lot of smart moves to make this team not just a competitor, but an AFC championship competitor for the last several years. And my God, I don't want to throw any more gasoline on this fire, but could you imagine if somehow they pulled that off? That would be otherworldly.
We talk all the time as fans about how this Bengals organization is moving towards change, and that would be the ultimate sign of change if they were to pull the trigger on a trade that sent I don't want to use the word disgruntled, because I don't know that necessarily describes T. Higgins, but a guy who's at the end of his rope. And I don't know. That would be the ultimate sign of change to me if this Bengals organization was to pull the trigger on a trade of that magnitude.
Yeah, and this T thing could go a little sideways on the Bengals. I mean, you think that he'll just, be able to be happy with $20.5 million or whatever the number is and play this season, and he can probably leave next year as a free agent. But he can talk to these other teams that can say, hey, this is a long-term deal we would give you if we can work out something. When he starts seeing mega guaranteed money that he can't get his hands on because the Bengals aren't willing to take that trade or whatever it is, that's when he could really become disgruntled. When he's going, I could have $50 million guaranteed or whatever it is, and I'm not getting, I'm getting a third of that or less than a half of that. And guaranteed money obviously is big in the NFL because of the injury factor. So that's what everyone wants. That's what every player wants. Obviously, every agent wants, because that goes to their bottom line as well. And, that's where disgruntled may be mild of how he feels when he starts seeing what he could make on an open market or what he could make for a team willing to deal for him. So we'll see how this plays out. But if they could work a deal with Minnesota, hallelujah, that would be something. I'd like to see what that deal is. But I hope this thing doesn't go sideways with him if he does stay. But when they start seeing what's out there and what other teams think they're worth, that they would be willing to give him today if they could work a deal, that's when things can get scary.
Well, I guess to me, the only thing that makes this even in the 1% possibility is the fact that the Bengals still have over $30 million in cap space unspent, even with the guys that they've brought in already. And that's including, of course, cutting Joe Mixon, which it is what it is. That one didn't get me in the heartstrings as much as it got plenty of people in their heartstrings. But I think that we have gotten a guy who has home run potential, and Joe Mixon just didn't quite have that extra gear at this point in his career. That all said, $30 million left right now in salary cap. And if you were to move T. Higgins, that frees up 22.8 or whatever the number is right now. So that's potentially $50 million plus that you have to move and play with in order to make a splash like this.
Then if they make a splash like that, though, what you got to think too is then what's left for the next guy?
Ja'Marr Chase.
Correct. Then what's and then how does that play out? Because that's going to be a tough one too. That's one you don't want to get to where it's the franchise tag, because
right,
as much as I think of T. Higgins and how good he is and how good he can be, Ja'Marr Chase is kind of one of a kind.
Different.
I mean, his strength, his acrobatic ability. I mean, Justin Jefferson's the only guy that you can probably even put in that category right now. Tyreek Hill's a different kind of receiver. You know, he's a burner and he's got the moves, but the strength that Chase has is just kind of otherworldly. And so they're going to want to keep him. And I don't know where a deal for a Justin Jefferson, you know, and you got Burrow with his deal, how much are you tying into these, you know, Cadillac positions there? And you know, you got to have an offensive line to keep Joe Burrow upright. You can't just have a bunch of wide receivers.
Yeah, and you do need to figure out what you're doing at tackle, as Jonah Williams still remains a free agent. There's certainly still some names out there. The biggest one that comes to mind is Trent Brown. He's still out and available. I'm curious if the Bengals are waiting until next week to see if some of those prices come down on some of these guys, and maybe they go for a lower tier in that regard. But I would hope that they sign somebody at that tackle position in intent of starting.
Yes,
and then you're able to kind of play the best player available card, as you've now sealed up your tight end, and of course you need a defensive tackle as well in order to truly play that game. But they've really kind of shored up all their needs outside of that defensive tackle and right tackle, I guess.
Yeah, and if they do go into the draft having to take a tackle, though, I think they're in pretty good shape to get one there. I think
it's deep into tackle. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's early depth there, so it won't be the end of the world. But I would like to see them lock one up. But then it's going to, depend on what they have to spend on the defensive line, and where do they get another corner? Wougier left. They're going to need a corner somewhere, and I don't know if that's Dax Hill or not. If he moves, to corner now that Stone's here and can play with Jordan Battle, I don't know. That's for Lou to figure out, and us to enjoy the process and watch it play out. But they definitely could use a corner.
I'm with you. I do not want to see. We've seen Cam Taylor-Britt get his fair share of nicks and bruises here and there, but I don't want to see them go in expecting DJ Turner to be the guy with no close competition.
Correct.
I want there to certainly be a battle for that other spot, and I don't want it to be particularly just a kind of, I guess, a thought that DJ Turner is just your guy. That
right.
terrifies me.
But I'll
absolutely
give
terrifying.
this and back to Duke Tobin. I mean, they've done a good job finding these guys, these corners that fit what they like, and they've been doing a good job moving right along. And they've had to move on from some guys. Jackson, the first round pick, they had to move on from him a couple years ago, and they were able to shore that up and really probably come away better than they were when they had William Jackson. So they've been pretty good at that. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have to keep hitting, batting 1,000. And I don't think they have to, but they've been hitting at a pretty good clip. And if you want to stay at the top of the heap in the AFC, you kind of got to do that. But you just can't hit on them all. And one of these days, and last year they maybe got a lemon at the safety position when they thought, they were taking Nick Scott from the Rams, and that didn't seem to work out very well.
Yeah, even with the move like the Zach Moss move, I'd be shocked if they didn't draft a running back, especially in the first maybe 2 days. Probably more leaning second day. As you look at that, I don't think third round is a reach in this draft for a running back. If you're looking for a guy to compete with the Chase Brown or even with the Zach Moss, I think that there's certainly some room there. So I don't know. I'm excited for the draft now, as I think they've positioned themselves well. I think they've got plenty of cap space to either try and do some unthinkable things that the Bengals are not accustomed to doing, or at the very least make a decent signing at that defensive tackle spot, get another receiver in here. As there's certainly plenty of room in the receiver market right now to move around. But just, I don't know. I think that they've made, we said this at the very beginning, they've made a lot of cost-effective moves by filling some of these holes. And I love the Gesicki signing, as we now have the best and worst gritties in the NFL.
Sorry, I got thrown by that John Lomax thing I just saw on the comments. God dang, that throws me for a loop. Yeah, I'll talk about him in a minute. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, holy smokes. Is that true? Good Lord. That throws me for a loop.
Yeah, it's 12. It's true. 12 put it up.
Oh my God. I'll be darned. Wow. Good man. So
it was in TV when you started, and that's,
you're not going to believe this story. So that dude was working, I want to say, in Knoxville. And I'm working on the assignment desk at WLWT, and this is like 1982 or 3. And they bring Lomax in for an interview to be an anchor at our station. And so I don't know what the news director is doing, but John shows up at the station, and I'm basically hosting him and doing my job. And he was tremendous. We hit it off right away, had a great conversation all day. Loved the guy. And I thought, God, we're going to get this guy, and he's such a nice guy and all this. Well, while he was in town, he goes over to 12 and interviews there. Apparently got a better offer, whether it was the job or the money or both, and takes the job with them. And I almost felt jilted. And
you hosted the official visit and didn't get your guy.
I would see him. Every time I saw him, I would bring that up. I'm like, you crushed me when you took that job at WKRC and did not come back to WLWT. And he's like, I know. It was tough. He goes, I love you. We had a great time. And I mean, it's wow, I didn't know that. That really hurts. That threw me for a
You're
loop.
muted, Chad.
I just saw that.
I said we have to find out who hosted his official visit to Channel 12.
Yeah, somebody with a lot more juice and magnetism than me, I guess. But we always laughed about that, and we always kept a great.
It was Brand So Handsome,
and that's how he was. He was salt of the earth, nice guy. God, that we lost a good one, man. That sucks.
Yeah, I was going to tell you at the end of the show, but yeah. He was a good dude. I wasn't around him a ton, but every time I was around him, he was smiling, nice as can be, welcoming.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of those in the industry. Not
He
as
only
many
just-
as there should be.
Only just retired about 2 years ago.
My God. Yeah, that's wow. God, I just tried to send a picture to him. It was back in December. I'm down at a Cyclones game, and he was still on a WKRC poster down there on the wall. And I was going to send him that picture. Damn. Huh.
Well,
To hear that.
I don't know that there's any easy way to transition to the Cincinnati Reds from that.
No, there's not, but we'll do it. But man, that's tough. I'm really sorry to hear that. I am really sorry to hear that. Good man.
Well, the Cincinnati Reds have announced an opening day starter. It will be another new opening day starter for the 15th straight season, it feels like.
Yeah, it does.
Will not be Hunter Green again this year, but it will be Frankie Montas.
Well, Frankie's got when he's healthy, he's good. Hopefully he's healthy. Looks pretty good so far. Says he's healthy. Was really good when he was healthy with Oakland. Not so much with New York because he was never healthy with the Yankees. So
Right.
Hopefully the Reds get him back, and with a picture of health that he can be what they think he can be, and that is an anchor at the top of this rotation and bring these young guys along with him. You talk about all these different starting pitchers starting opening day, and I remember the Jimmy Haynes and Joey Hamilton era where there were guys, the Reds would just have these cattle calls at spring training for starting pitchers, all these half washed up veterans, and any one of them could be the opening day starter because somebody had to start it. And that was not a good era of Reds pitching. This is a little different. It's been different guys, but they've all been viable options.
Yeah.
Frankie Montas has a much better track record than those two guys I just mentioned. Same with Sonny Gray, who started an opening day. Hunter Green, maybe not, but certainly potential that is, the sky's the limit for that guy. So it's a little different that they're having these different guys start opening day now than, say, 25 years ago when they were really struggling and just praying to find some viable arms in camp from veterans who were leaking a lot of oil at the time. It's a great honor for Frankie. I wonder if he understands. And it's funny to talk to some of these Reds players, and a lot of them don't know. They understand opening day's big, and it's big in Cincinnati, and it was the first professional team, and all the pomp and circumstance at the stadium. What a lot of them don't see is all the stuff, the parade and all that. And then when they retire and they come back and, they'll ride in the car in the parade, they're like, holy God, I had no idea this was going on before our opening day baseball game. It's like they really learn to understand. I think the Reds have done a good job, and with some of these former players that talk with the team about just how big it is in this city, that opening day is more than the game. It's really a celebration of Reds baseball and a celebration of baseball and a celebration of the city. I mean, it should be a city holiday.
He mentioned that he'd gone back and watched some of the old Reds pitching and just some of the things from the past and some of the Reds history. And so I think he has at least an idea of how big a deal it is that he is getting to be the starting pitcher. Again, we brought up Hunter Green. He will be the opening night as he'll get game 2 from by all accounts. So it's not as if he's just a forgotten arm at this point. He's right up there.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, no, That might be. Is that kids' opening day this year? I should have looked at the schedule, but I didn't. Sometimes that Saturday they make kids' opening day, and they have that red carpet that the players walk on, and the kids are outside. And unfortunately for the Reds, it seems like it's rained a lot of those, where it kind of rained on that parade, so to speak. But the Reds have done such a great job of doing things like that. And I know they get beat on for what's gone on the field, and I totally get all that. And a lot of it I can agree with. But when it comes to stadium improvements and game day experience for fans and a lot of things they do in the community, and that community fund and Charlie Frank and what they do is unbelievable. You have no idea the things they do, and with that academy up there in Roselawn, and that thing's off the charts, and the events they have up there for kids and local teams. It's the RBI program they have with the inner city teams that get to go play in these regional and national tournaments, and they do so many great things like that. So if it sounds like I'm shilling for the Reds here, I kind of am, because I know the product on the field has been rough for quite a while, but by the same token, off the field and some things that really matter around here that they've been really, really good at, and they've done a great job with the Hall of Fame. I could go on and on. I just think what they've done over the years to connect with the people. And, sometimes they've been begging for fans to come down there. I don't think it'll be that way this year, because they have an exciting product on the field now. And it'll be nice to see if it does eventually finally all come together, because that's a great stadium to watch a game in. I just love it down there.
Yeah. Noelvi Marte, he was popped for 80 games. He will not be with the Reds as he tests positive for a banned substance. It was definitely a steroid. Any thoughts in regards to young Mr. Marte?
No, what a shame. What a shame. And I guess
number one prospect.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I don't know what he did. I guess he's appealing, or I heard that was going to happen, and that you just gotta know. You gotta know they're going to find out. And every guy says, well, it was in some supplement. I didn't know. We've been down that road so many times. You got to be careful. You can't do that stuff. The rules are the rules, and he got popped, and it's a shame. And it's also a shame he's going to miss 80 games, and then the season he's ineligible for that. For a guy who, entering the season was seen as a potential Rookie of the Year candidate. So it's a shame. I hate it. I hate it for him, but he may be the guy that he has to point the finger at as to why this happened.
Yeah, you got to know what you're putting in your body when you're at that level. And then Joey Votto is on to Toronto. Lots of people have been clamoring for him to go back home to Canada, back home to Toronto, where he grew up. I know there were some baby pictures floating around of him in Blue Jays gear as a 1 or 2 year old. But Joey Votto getting an opportunity as essentially a walk-on for the Blue Jays as he tries to land on the roster. He's getting a shot, and that is all he's really asked for this offseason.
Yeah, and it's good that he's doing it there. I think it would have felt weird. It feels weird, okay, that he's somewhere else besides the Reds. It really does. It seems weird. It looks weird. However, if there's one place that makes sense and is probably easier for the Joey Votto nuts in this area, and there's a bunch of them, and with good reason, that would be the place. So hopefully it works out for him, and he finds what he's looking for there. Obviously, he just did not fit on this roster anymore. I mean, given what they've acquired, what they've signed, what they have coming up, it just wouldn't work here. There just wasn't room. but for his sake, I hope it works out up there. We'll see how it does. I'm not sure. I mean, the man can fall out of bed and hit, but he just hasn't hit at the kind of average and the on base percentage he's used to here these past couple of years.
Now, selfishly, I want him to do whatever it takes to get him back here in Cincinnati as a coach, but that's just me. Obviously, he's got other plans and expectations of himself. So good luck to him, but
we'll see. And two other things here in the comments. TJ Antone, is he going to hold up this season? Yeah, I really hope so. Because when he's on, holy God, the track record suspect.
Fingers crossed.
Banking on it. And Nick Krall, I felt like his hands were really tied for a while. And so it was really tough to judge him the first year or two. But when you start looking at these deals he made and what he got in return, and some of the deals were very proactive, man, he's done a good job. Look at the talent, the young talent, and what they acquired in those trades that they got back for those pitchers. I think he's done a good job. I think he's done a really good job. And a year and a half ago, I wasn't sure, but
he's certainly done a better job than his predecessor, who I'm still not certain was not a Trojan horse sent here by the St. Louis Cardinals.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, it sure seemed to work out that way. I don't know what was going on there, but yeah, that didn't work at all.
No.
Didn't work at all.
So I'm more than pleased with the job.
All the way up now.
Yes.
And a lot. I shouldn't say a lot of GMs, but yeah, a lot of them probably have. But I mean, he's worked from, the bottom rungs of the organization, knows how everything works, and is a very, very likable guy that I think everybody in that organization has respect for, because, he's shown a lot of respect as he's come up through every rung and hasn't forgotten where he came from.
Well, anything that you want to drop on any of our other random categories, whether it be FC Cincinnati or any of the.
Hopefully, they start putting the ball in the net. I mean, they're playing well. They just can't score, and they should have, bare minimum, that game against Monterey. That should have been at least a draw. I mean, they dominated a large portion of that match, and it was a shame that they fell 1-0. So that'll be interesting Thursday to see if they can, return the favor and somehow move on in this. What are they in? The round of 16?
CONCACAF
Champions Cup. Yeah. So we'll see if they can take the next step. And then it's back to MLS play on Sunday in New England, where they've struggled to score goals too the last couple of matches. But if they get that, and look, they've had chances. I think it'll start going in the net for them, and we'll see a lot of the success we saw last year, because obviously the defense is getting it done. And these new guys they picked up are looking pretty darn good. So, yeah, there's that. Newport winning the boys' 9th region championship tonight here in Northern Kentucky over at Truist Arena at NKU. And then tomorrow night in Ohio, Division I boys basketball, Hamilton Centerville, Elder Moeller regional semifinals at a campus in Cincinnati not named UC.
Oh, there you go. Subtle. I like your style.
I'm not allowed to say, am I?
Well, here's the thing. You don't work for a network where you have to be unbiased. So we don't have to say, is the thing. But don't have to say.
It's at Cintas Center.
Anyway. That's going to wrap it up for another. That's going to wrap it up for another episode.
I had the hat on for the whole show.
There you go. That's going to wrap it up for another episode of George in the Jungle. Again, thank you to our sponsor, Remington Tavern. You can catch them at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m. $5 Woodford Wednesdays. You can check them out on Instagram at RemyTavCincy, or follow them on Facebook. But for my partner, George Vogel, I'm Aaron Smith. We'll see you next week, 9 o'clock p.m.
Thank you, Aaron.